How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, I'm actually really excited about this week's head case, and not only for this, for a couple of reasons. I didn't know this person beforehand, but I got to meet her on here, and she's just truly an amazing person, amazing woman, and a very powerful woman as well, I might say. She's been a NAHA winner and finalist 5 times at the Midwest Hairstyling Awards. She came away with a hat trick, if you can believe this, on Texture Artist of the Year, Master Stylist of the Year, Hairstylist of the Year. She is the founder and owner of Hair Lab Barber School in Detroit. She's a curly hair specialist, freelance educator, salon owner, public speaker, school director, and she's been sought after by all sorts of magazines and websites for her contributions thereof. And so I just want to jump into this. So let's get into this week's head case, Lauren Moser-Samuels. So here she is. Lauren, it is just an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And so first of all, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's really interesting because I a while back I had a conversation with your amazing husband as well, and I may want to find out some of the similar stuff, and then we can the audience can compare the two, and it's the same as my relationship in here. I'll give my version of the facts, and then my wife will give you the truth. So
yep, that's pretty much how it goes, isn't it?
So listen, first of all, I know that and I'm going to sort of give a swing back so everybody gets the kind of vibe in here. Is you're known separately for what you do, and then you're also known for that you're married and you have an amazing business together with Hair Lab Detroit, and you also do things together, and I know that it's when you hosted the 2022 NAHA, you were the host for it. First of all, I just want to go back into kind of the relationship to you guys and how that all worked out, because sometimes people they can work together, but they can't live together, and they can't be partners together. Does that make sense? Right. So give us first of all, how did you guys meet?
I feel like this is one of the tests to see who's telling the truth. This is one of those stories that you're like, let's see her version and see how close it matches. Yeah. It was pretty interesting. At the time that we met, I was single for a while. I was really just focusing on my career, my kids. I really enjoyed my own company, if that makes sense. You just get to a point in life when you're like, I'm going to cut out all the drama and extras and just really buckle down and focus on growing. Yeah. I had been doing hair at that point for about 14 or 15 years. And I'm a cosmetologist. So in the cosmetology world, Aveda specifically, I did an apprenticeship at an Aveda salon. So like clipper cuts were not a thing. Right. You were not allowed to touch a clipper. No. Everything was scissors, shear over comb. Yep. It was, crafted men's haircuts because we're trying to pull them away from the barbers at the time. It was the 90s, right? So
a little bit of irony happening there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right. It was It was back in the 1900s when I was not allowed to touch a clipper. Yeah. But at that point in my career, I had done so many things. I had specialized in color. I had then moved on to hair cutting. I was getting into the curly cutting more and more. And one of the things, and I had a pretty decent sized male clientele, but one of the things that I was lacking was the clipper cutting skills. Yeah. And in the mid 2000s or like 2000, I don't even know how you refer to that time period, but like 2010-ish, all of these men that were coming for these shear over comb, like crafted haircuts, they wanted the barber cuts. They wanted these tight, high and tight clipper cuts. And I was just really out of my element. And I realized like I had to start taking classes in this because it wasn't just one client randomly. It started to become like a daily thing where I was getting sweaty. You know, that moment when the client comes in, like, oh, I don't know, I'm hot. Like, I just need a second. So I started to have a lot of those moments, and I thought, okay, well, I need to do something about this because I don't like feeling that way. I'm not one to like sit with that feeling and just ignore it, right? So I wanted to take a class. So I had reached out to him maybe a year before that to train my staff at the salon I owned. And we had a bunch of financial stuff kind of come up in the salon, and we just couldn't do it at the time. So this was a year later, and I reached out to him to see if I could take the class. Yeah. I had since sold the business, and I was working there, but I just needed some time to myself to figure myself out. So I asked if he could teach it. He was one of the barbers on my Facebook that was always promoting barbering and barber classes. And I'm like, well, he's the guy, I guess, right? Like, I don't know any barbers. I'm like, well, this guy will work. He's on here all the time. So I reached out to him and asked, for a class schedule or whatever. And he didn't have one. He's like, just tell me when you want to come down and do the class. So, he said he would do the class for free if I took him to dinner.
Well, that was creepy. That's a fair shake. Well, I guess from a guy's side, I thought, no, that's a good deal. But I guess from a lady's side,
right. And I was with a friend of mine in Philly who owns a bunch of barbershops. They own his family owns salons and stuff. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And he goes, well, I mean, you have nothing left or nothing to lose. I'm like, my whole life. What do you mean? This guy is just luring me down to the deep south so he can chop me up or something. But apparently my life wasn't really worth much at the time. So my friend said, you should just do this because you've got nothing else going on. So I said, okay. So I said, well, where should I stay? Like, I don't know the area, like I don't know where I'll be or, what hotel is near there, and he said, you can come stay at my house. I was like, this is just getting weirder and weirder. Now, at the time, though, I'm in Philly staying with my friend who does hair, right? We met through the industry. And I said, oh my God, he said he can stay at my house. He's like, you're at my house. I was like, oh. Well, yeah, but I know you, right? We've met before. So, but here's the weird thing. He wasn't flirting with me.
Oh, gotcha.
He was just, take this class, stay at my house. Which made it creepier, right? Like if he was flirting, you're like, oh, but he wasn't. It was the weirdest thing. So then I thought, well, maybe I should get to know him if I'm staying at his house and taking a class, it's going to be awkward. So I would try to message him, small talk, just to see like a vibe. There was no vibe. Like he would answer me. I'm like, okay, this is weird. So one night I caught him, must have been in a good mood. He gave me like sentences in response. So I thought, okay, well, here we go. And we ended up talking on the phone that night for hours. And then we met 2 weeks later and we've been together ever since. Amazing. So I never got that class. I just gave him all my clients. Yeah. Like he moved up here, we opened a salon and I was like, here's all my clients. So I guess I didn't need to learn it at that point because he took over all my male clients.
Yeah, and I want to just jump back into that because first of all, I love the story, and quite frankly, he never told it that way. So it's nice to get clarity on that. But what I think is, for the people that don't know him, I mean, number one, I would suggest here, initial thing of, go watch the podcast. You'll get to know more about him. But I mean it from this as I know him as a very positive, caring gentleman, and I think that.
Which can come off as serial killery, apparently. He's about to chop me up, and he's really just being a nice guy.
Well, I guess, certain sociopaths can be that same way as well. But, that the point is he is not. And he's not at all creepy, and he's just a wonderful gentleman. And I love the fact that you guys got together and because it's always, to me, when I see two powerhouses together, and I can relate this sort of with my wife and myself. While no, Rita is very comfortable in the background, does not want her picture taken, just wants to stay in the background, etc. It's like the one and one equals three or four, because the sum of the whole is greater than sum of individual parts. That's in our relationship. And that's the reason why we've lasted now, whatever the hell it is, 53, 54 years. But, and I love the fact that how you two got together and you're actually better because you're together than you are individual. So congratulations on that. And I'm glad now that we set the story straight so I can bust his chops the next time I see him.
Yeah. He was creepy. Yeah. It was creepy. I don't know. I'm here though. We made it through. I survived. Yeah. We survived.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So give us the kind of the history on how did Hair Lab Detroit start? What happened there? Because you guys you didn't start off there.
Right. So I had, like I said, I owned a salon prior to Hair Lab with some friends. I learned that I love being part of a team, but I do not love having business partners.
Got it.
So our drives were just different, and I was always like, okay, we did that. Now what? Yeah. Right. We did this. Now what? We did this. Now what? And they were like, we did this. Let's put our feet up and coast. Right. So there was friction there because we just had different ideas of movement, I guess. So before we met, I had already sold that and gotten out of it. And I was working there still because I liked everybody. It wasn't a toxic situation. It was just, we want different things. And instead of waiting until we hate each other, let's just do our right.
This is the other partner that you had. Yes.
Yeah. I had 3 other partners. There was 4 of us.
Yeah. Wow.
So you know how those end, right?
Yes.
So I'd already sold that. So I was pretty free to do what I needed to do at that point. I was throwing hair events for that company in Philly that my friend owns. So I was doing those here. And then we met, and he was already doing some education for Andis. And we started doing education together. So we started doing shows and classes here in Detroit and just wherever salons would hire us, schools would hire us. But we didn't really have like a brand that we were teaching under just because we were 2 separate people that came together. And so he actually came up with Hair Lab, which I'm not real good at naming people or businesses. So I tend to rely on the people around me to help with that.
But know your strength.
He came up with, I'm like, no, I don't want it. He came up with that, and we originally were just teaching under that brand, and then we ended up opening the salon brick and mortar. We did that for 5 or 6 years before we opened the school with Larry Curtis. So that's kind of the trajectory of everything. But we ended up closing the salon when we opened the school just because managing both would have been
well, you can't.
Too much.
When you have a school, it's you have to be there full time. So, I'm involved in schools, but you're there full time. You have a way better understanding of it than I do. But I do know that if you're the owner, you need to be there because nobody will run it like you will. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do everything. I'm just saying that it's there. I totally understand. Now, I have to admit, okay, I was stalking you before this, and I went to the site that you have, and there was a quote that and I can't remember what I saw it on a wall or whether it was a quote that you had written in, but I thought it was so profound, and I just want you to talk to that point because you are a curly hair specialist, and the quote I wrote it down, and correct me if I wrote it down wrong, but it says, "We teach our students at Hair Lab Detroit that you are cutting," and here's the part that I loved, "you are cutting hair texture, not cutting ethnicity."
Mm-hmm.
Can you I just love that. Can you talk to that point?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to curly hair, people get so caught up on the racial part of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, black hair, white hair. And I don't know if anyone walks around with their eyes open lately, but there's a lot of mixing going on out there. So it's a little too hard to be putting it in a box. And at the end of the day, right, it's all a fabric.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a fabric that happens to grow out of somebody's head. So it makes more sense to talk texture, curl pattern, things like that than the color of someone's skin, because I promise you, I've had people in my chair that have white skin and what would traditionally be known as black hair.
Yeah.
And to call it that is incorrect, you know. So we just like to talk in texture, because also no matter who you're talking to and what you're talking about, if you're referencing this type of thing, don't you feel like you get a lot more information if I say straight hair or coily hair or wavy hair than black hair and white hair, right? Because I could say white hair, but does that mean straight? Does that mean wavy? Does that mean, you know,
and you know, so
thick? You know, who knows?
like I love that, because that tells me at the schools that you're teaching it. Number one. Number two is that, I mean, first of all, hair doesn't have a gender. You know, it's just like, it's hair. You know, I remember sort of my background was dipped very heavily into sassoons, and I remember that's one thing that they taught was it's just a texture. You know, and you can't align yourself with just one texture, just like, you know, and it may be a bad analogy, but you if you're an artist, you may end up in one area with oils or with, I saw this amazing artist just the other day who makes these 50s, 40s, 50s kind of scenes, very high opacity scenes. And he makes them all just with tape and then shining light behind them. So, but it's different mediums that you go to, but you have to know a lot about all of the mediums before you become specific. You know, like a doctor, you got to be generalist first, and then you pick, you know, you can be a generalist forever what you want to do, or you can just be specific. This is all I want to do. But in our industry is if you want to make money, you know, then you've got to know everything. And I loved what you said earlier is you just became, I can't just sit here in my own stew because I'm afraid when somebody comes in with XYZ hair type. You've just got to go out and learn it, for God's sake.
Well, and that's how my sister has curly hair, so that's how I started doing curly hair, because sisters are mean. So when you cut their hair and you don't know what they're doing or what you're doing, they're gonna make sure you cry, right? They're gonna make sure that you know deep down in your heart that you are terrible at your job.
That's the price.
Yeah. So I developed my curly cutting system on her specifically just because she was the only one to give me honest feedback. And what I've learned with curly clients is that they don't give feedback at all because they go into it expecting you not to do it right. So when you fulfill what they think is going to happen, of course they're not calling and complaining. They expected it, right? So as I got better at dealing with curly textures, the curls started to get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and the requests were getting a little more unfamiliar in terms of the styling that they were asking for. I just wasn't sure, because when you get into different cultures as well, right? So each culture has their approach to hair. Now, when we're talking about the African American community, this goes back generations and generations and generations of moms and daughters and aunts and nieces, right? They're all doing each other's hair. So like sometimes some of the styling methods or whatever, they're not taught in the same way, or the same words aren't used. So it might be more like a vernacular thing than anything else, just that it's more casual when you're talking historic hairstyles, right? Versus what we learn in school or whatever. So I just started to get a little more uncomfortable again. So I started, and now mind you, I've been doing hair 15 years at this point. I went and I assisted on Saturdays for free a stylist that worked at an all black salon. So there were barbers there, there were cosmetologists there were like people that specialized in color and all of that. So for me, I needed to do it for just the like cultural submission.
Yeah.
Submersion, I should say, not submission, submersion. Because I really wanted to understand, the trauma behind the hair, right? Because there's a lot of trauma going on with curly haired people, whether it's they were taught their hair isn't professional or that their hair is the problem, or, because we've heard stylists go, oh, they just have bad hair. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
it's no hair is innately bad, right?
Yeah.
Like hair doesn't grow out of your head bad. So it's either pushed to be bad or you don't know what you're doing.
Bingo.
And so it's
bingo. I love what you just said there, because it isn't that, yes, that I love the fact about how you talked about trauma, and that's not only that's culturally, it's within the business, etc. But the fact that you said their hair is bad. And I find that happens so much nowadays, where we make excuses for why we can't do it. And we just say, well, that's bad hair. Who would want to do that when it's hair? That's our job. It's like saying, oh, liver is bad. Now, my liver might be bad, but it's for completely because of what I put into it. But the reality is hair is hair. And I know we're not allowed to use this word anymore, or we're not supposed to for being PC, but even when they used to use it negatively, saying, oh, it's just frizzy. But, I'm sorry, but I think if that's a texture, it's beautiful. You can make it like, I can't remember who, there was an actress that was on, a black actress that was on TV commercial in the last while. I don't remember the commercial, but I always remember her. And in that 30-second spot, they showed her in different armor. At one time, it just perfect curls. And it was like the way the color was put into it, and then it was smoothed out a bit more. And the next time, it was in this amazing, afro frizz that looked spectacular on her. And I think that we just need to wise up as a community, and we need to, stop blaming and just start learning. I think that's a key area that we have. The things that we're afraid of, we're just afraid of it because we don't know, and we want to be safe. I understand that,
Yeah.
So now I understand, and I'm getting a better feeling why you're a curly hair specialist. I mean, I think you're a specialist in everything you do, but I think if we could as a community get together, and I've always had this dream that wouldn't it be great if there's sometimes this separation in our communities, hairdresser to hairdresser, whatever color your skin is, that we create a separation because we view ourselves as competition. If I've got a salon next door to you, I feel like I'm your competition. It might be it's more I don't like you because you're bad mouthing me and I'm bad mouthing you, and therefore we can't get along. But I just think that we've got a community, and look at I just saw it just came out the other day where Pro Beauty just came out with a report on the earnings that happened in the industry and where and they quoted that there was an 81 or 82% decline in the industry in 2000 and 2022. Well, I went, well, duh, we had COVID. Of course, we had 81% decline. But then they started to talk about the increase, and there's actually, I think, about 30% less hairdressers out there right now than there was during COVID. And that's why so many salons are saying, look, I've got all these people in, I just can't find hairdressers. So that's why I think schools like yours are doing the job of teaching all these different kinds so that we can accommodate them. And we need to accommodate that. So I think that's where our industry needs to get all of those kids up to speed as fast as we possibly can. But with this, I'm sorry, and I'm going to apologize right now because I'm on a little bit of a rant on this ever since I saw that report, because I have a real bee in my bonnet about how our industry is perceived. And we have and God bless. I only wish, and I love the hairdressers that support the Hollywood community, but I have a bit of a bee on my bonnet the way that they portray hairdressers, and because they always make us look. Let's face it, we have freedom, so we can be the people we want to be. But they always take this negative side of how we look and act and do. When I'm sure you can do the same thing, because I know that I bet you make more money than a lot of the people that are out there that call themselves professionals. But here's what a CUNY report that came out. And it said, and I'm just glancing at the numbers here because I'm not a numbers guy, so I got to write them down. And there's this government skewed perception of what our industry makes. And the government, just because of the analytics and the algorithms that they use, comparing us against full-time carpenters, et cetera. When
I was just about to say the problem with the government, and I'm in the middle of, I'm about to take them on by myself if I have to.
I'm with you.
They're not looking at the number of hours worked per week.
Bingo.
So I know when my kids were young, I was working 2 days a week. So I was still making $30,000 working 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Right. So if you do the math and you say, okay, well, what if she's working? I was working 16 hours,
Yeah.
16 hours. Yeah. Right. So if you do the math.
Well, it's your 2.5. That's 2.5 times what you actually did. If you did a 40-hour work week or 50 hours, that meant your $30,000 was at your $30,000 was actually $75,000 what you were earning, and
that was 3 years out of school.
Yeah, wow. See it? And here's what I got is what they were saying was CUNY came out with this report, and it said that we got this 27,000 that they say that we actually make, and that actually hurts all of the amazing schools that we have in our country, because now they're saying, well, why would we give grants to somebody to go to an educational institute, private one, for profit, that says they only make $27,000 a year. So, and I'm just going to use a round number here. It's not the exact number, but just say, why would we give somebody $20,000 grant when they're only going to make that 1 year? Which is absolutely untrue. And CUNY reported here that the average hourly rate in America right now for hairdressers is $38.37 on the average. And if you did what the average W-2 was $54,307. That's when you take the bottom most and the top most and you lump them all together. And they said that if you took the 24% of those people, and you looked at what their earnings were $48,000, and that amounted, if you put it into a 40-hour work week. Now, this is saying, I just want to be clear on this, because it said that would amount to making $100,000 a year plus. But that meant that if you worked those 5 days, you would make $100,000. But if you don't want to, whatever you're working, it's prorated. So you can't start lumping all that stuff together.
They're not prorating it. So I could talk for 3 hours on this subject, just because I'm in the financial aid office here, and I'm, I've done every job in the school except instructor. I haven't done that, but
that surprises me, because you're a hell of an educator.
Listen, when we did this, I came from behind the chair and was the academy director, financial aid director. I was the one-man show in here trying to get all the background stuff done. So, all of this is starting up. They're trying to get rid of trade schools, and this is both parties. You love it when everyone's like, "Oh, vote this party," because the other one's trying to they're both trying to get rid of us. The Republicans are trying to deregulate. The Democrats are trying to gainful employment us out of the mix. But the problem is the government is saying that trade schools, specifically cause and barber schools, are predatory because we're charging so very much. Now we have an 1,800 hour program.
Yeah.
And our tuition is $18,000. I'm sorry, but I can't do it for less when the Department of Ed has all of these things that we have to, I mean, just the compliance part, you need so much staff. So they say that we're predatory because our students are graduating and the debt from the loans is so great compared to what they're making. But here's the problem that I have. Now, if you look at a university, how many people are going to a 4 or 6 year university, getting a degree and making the same or double what their loans are?
Yeah.
I can promise you it's hardly any.
Yeah.
Our students are graduating and making that much per year, if not
More.
double.
Exactly.
If not triple, right? A couple years out. So, and I'm going to get a little conspiracy theory on you for 1 second.
Go for it.
This is the conversation. If you look at college used to be affordable, right? And the government sat back and thought, well, how can we make money, right? Let's do loans. Hey, colleges, why don't you charge more? If you charge more, we can loan them the money and then make the interest on it. And you can make more money and we can make more money. And so that started hiking these prices up for the universities, right? And they're driving everybody to university because guess what? The government is not making as much on my student that only took $20,000 in loans when they can make the interest on $150,000 loans that somebody that's going to school or college is taking out.
Yeah.
Another thing that I see is that they're not teaching the students in the grade schools and middle schools. We're getting students that can't read.
Yeah.
So of course our outcome rates are bad because we could push them through our program, but the state has a reckoning that they have to take the state board test. Now, if I came out of high school and I couldn't read, I could fudge my way through university and get a degree and no one would know.
Right.
But they can't fudge through trade school.
Right.
Right. So I feel like we're getting it on both sides because one, they don't want to change the way they're doing all the kids dirty by not teaching them how to read. Right. You've got so many that are slipping through the cracks. And B, they're going to make so much more if they force everybody into college, the university that's going to charge so much instead of going to trade school. So that is something that I'm so passionate about. We have students that have dropped out of like 5 universities getting free grant money to come to school. And I think, if you've dropped out of that many schools, like maybe you don't get my tax money to pay for more schools.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen. And I think it's important for all hairdressers to know what is going on from a legislative position. I'm currently working with our state reps to lower our hours, to lower the barrier for students to get through the program.
Yeah.
1800's long.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. And then hopefully the Department of Ed stuff, I don't know.
Here's you said a couple of things. And I think that I love what you said about the way this is going. On my first point, I got 2 points I want to bring out there. Number one is when, if you think of getting a university education. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about it. We need people that are in that academic area. But in our society, to make our society work, you need academics and you need trades. Yep. Now, if everybody goes to, and this is just absolutely, it's a silly analogy, but I want you to just take it for what it's worth. If everybody goes to university and everybody comes is just about law or anything is about doctors, then what about who's going to do all the stuff that needs to get done? Like building your house, like doing your hair, like getting all the plumbing done, like servicing your car, taking you out and going and helping you on your vacations by doing your travel arranging. The whole point is our system is based on a community that serves one another. So you can't have just one and not the other. That's number one. Number two is, and this is the part that I feel is I'm going to get on a soapbox again. is the reason why that $27,000 number there, and I think you know this as well as I do, is hairdressers have to stop cheating on their taxes.
Yep.
You know, the reason why you're in that boat is if you're pocketing your money, and I mean, let's face it, there isn't a time in my life when I went, oh, you know, wouldn't that be nice just so I could take that and maybe just have a day off? But you still have to go on your own ethics, and you got to say, look, if I'm just cheating on my taxes all the time, then I downgrade my whole industry, because every time I do it, and I'm not blaming booth rent, I'm just saying it's easier to do if you're the only one looking at your books. And I know.
Well, I just want to add that in addition to that, you're really downgrading your life, because you're hiding money. So then, you know, you're claiming less money, you're paying less taxes, and that feels good, right? But if you're not paying into the country that you live in,
bingo,
right, then we lose the ability to provide for all citizens, right? So there's that. And, I don't love the way our government spends our tax money.
None of us do.
Everyone has their own opinions on that. Yeah. But it's an important part of being a part of society. In addition to that, you can't grow if you can't get credit.
Yeah.
So if you want to buy a house, if you need to buy a car, so even the booth renters, let's say you're a booth renter and you think no one's looking, I'm going to just pocket. But then you want to grow and you want to open your own shop, or you want to grow your own personal business, invest in classes, whatever. You can't even get credit to do that because you've been telling everybody that you're not making any money. Yeah. So then you don't look successful. On the flip side of that, I've seen so many businesses hide cash and then want to sell their business.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it.
Exactly.
And they're like, no, I've been just putting it over here though. And the accountants are like, right, but you can't lie and say that it's there. Right. So.
Yeah. And I love what you said there, because I want to be clear to anybody that is in the independent industry and other people listening to us, because it's a hot topic, is that we're not saying that all people that are independent cheat on taxes. We're not saying that every salon owner is doing it all ethically. I'm saying it's a thing that can run rampant in our industry. And for kudos for all of you out there who are doing it properly and ethically, but just remember that there's repercussions to everything when you do and you're not paying your taxes properly. You know, I know groups out there that when they join, they make it part of their code is pay your taxes, because they know what that does and reflects on our company. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Well, listen, I think we got heavy enough on that other one, and not that I want to lighten it up, but I do want to go on to another thing, simply because I heard people say that your full-time admissions, running all sorts of things in the school, etc. And I don't want to take away from the fact of the amazing hairdresser that you are. And I know that there's this, you were 5 times NAHA winner finalist. I know just in this, what was this, just this last year, you took home a trifecta, right? At the Midwest competitions where what was it? I think I heard texture, master stylist of the year, hairstylist of the year, etc. Yeah. So I want first of all, I know, because this is the most current, and you've been involved in it so long, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I think if anybody that's involved into competition, they go, give me one and I'm happy. Give me one award. I can walk away feeling like I've been validated, feeling good. But you took home a trifecta, for God's sake. How did that? I want to take you back to that moment, and maybe at wherever that felt in there. Walk us through the process of what it was like and what was going on in your head while that was happening.
Honestly, I'll be a little vulnerable for a second. I had really stepped away from hair in general when we did the school. It was learning what I had to learn to get this place going. I don't think I could even put into words the amount and at the speed that I had to get it all down, right? There's no room for error when you're dealing with Department of Ed and audits every year, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I'm learning this new thing and I'll make mistakes and it's fine. You know, we're running this branch for Larry Curtis of Taylor Andrews, right? So we have a branding agreement with them, and so he's using our brand, but we're in charge of this campus.
Yes.
Like, we are running it. And you know, you never want to let your friends, your mentors, your people down. And so I take that so seriously when somebody trusts me with something, that I do what I need to do. So I lost myself in financial aid, accounting, students. Like, I'm not an organized person. Like, I'm like your typical crazy hairdresser with like the messy, wild station and 4 people going at one time. Like, that's truly who I am. So when you stick me behind a desk and go, everything has to be organized and filed and everything has to be documented and tracked. And I mean, it was the single hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And then COVID happened. So not only was I trying to learn financial aid, I'm trying to save our company, because we still have Hair Lab as a company, right? And then there's the school that we're running this branch for. Some, you know, there was just so much riding on getting the loans and all of that stuff. So that became my focus. So I definitely was in a very dark place for a long time, because I wasn't even doing hair. I was doing everything but hair. So Rodrick really pushed me to enter the competition, and I'm like, I can't even think about it. Like, I don't even know what's the point. You know, I was just, you know, you get in a dark place, you're like, who cares? And he entered me, you know, he like forced me to do it, which, you know, it's a really delicate process, because yes, we do everything together. We love each other. We work together, we live together, but we are very independent people, very independent people. And like, we don't ride to work together, right? Like, I'm not being on his schedule. As I say, I wait for no man. So if I'm done working and you're not done working, we're going to fight. So he entered me, and I literally went into it with just like not feeling good about anything. So I had no speech, like nothing. Like, I literally was like, I'm just here because he fucking made me. You know, it was bad. And I just really was like, I'm not going to win, and I'm just here. Nobody wants to see me. I'm like washed up, whatever. And then I won those 3, and I didn't even, how do you even address that in a speech other than just like, I'm shocked. You know, it felt really good, and I think I needed it. And not from like a show off. I don't need awards. I'm not one of those people. You were talking about your wife. She like stands in the background and doesn't, you know, like, that's me. Like, I'm like, oh, it's just like, I'm like the workhorse. Like, I'm back here just getting stuff done. So the accolades mean a lot, but not in the showy sense that I think it comes off. For me, it was just like, I think I just needed that to remember like who I was.
Yeah.
So I guess you know, I don't think anyone really expects that, because I don't really put anything out there in general. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was it felt good because it felt normal again, right? Like being around people that were excited, and it's hard to be, and I've said this always, not always. It's you never want to be the smartest one in the room. Right. And in the school setting and in this setting, and being the one that had to like figure all this stuff out, the financial, all that, right? You got to a place where I'm like, who do I lean on? Right. So it got really hard. So I think in that moment, it was just great to be around other people that are great, and that I wasn't the smartest. I may be the award winner, but I'm not the smartest one in this room when we were at that award show. So it felt good just to be around our people again.
Yeah. And I think to the point, I think sometimes I don't want to take anything away from awards. And I'm just going to give a humble opinion, because what I'm about to say is just an opinion. It's not out there. It's only my opinion. But I think that we live in a society that where if you're good at something, that they move you up the chain faster. And if you don't, well, then you don't. And you're in a different bracket than a lot of people. You and I, the people that were at those awards, you're in a different bracket of people, because and there's no getting away from it. You may say you're not the smartest, but you're a leader, and they expect leaders to be there. And if anything, the way I look at it is I'm validating me to me. Because I'm like you, I don't write a speech. And if I have figured, if I write a speech, I'm automatically jinxing the process. And
I've never written a speech, never. But usually, even if I'm not writing a speech, I have an idea, right? At that time, I had nothing.
But I think that is what it is when you're in an elite society. Hollywood does it. Everybody else does it. Everybody does great work. Everybody does great hair. Everybody makes great images. And Hollywood makes great movies. But at the end of the game, sometimes we feel that for marketing purposes, you've got to get in there and show your worth. And if in marketing wise, it's people do it in salon of the year, a restaurant of the year, et cetera, barber of the year, nail salon of the year, massage, et cetera. We've got to think about the marketing that happens for your brand that you have of a business, and even your own brand, if that is your business. And so, I take my hat off to anybody, you included, who enters an award, because the peer pressure, no, that's not the right word. The fact of, we all know of wizard brain, that makes decisions, lizard brain that says, oh, I'm not going to do that because somebody might judge me. But the reality is that's what you do every time you put your business out there. That's what you do when you come into an award. And it's not, you ain't going to win every time. I always call myself the Susan Lucci of the NAHA, because I can come second or third many times more than I win. But the reality is it takes a special person to have your work judged by your peers and be put at a pinnacle of top, first, second, third, etc. So I think that from my word of encouragement would be, if anybody that's out there, just to do it, because you'll push your creativity even if you don't win. What's your feeling? Yeah. What would you say to people out there that are either afraid of doing it or are thinking about doing it?
So when I had been behind the chair for a while, I was just needing to have more of a creative outlet. I started to work with local photographers and models, and they have the Model Mayhem sites. I don't even know if that's still a thing. I'm still so out of the loop right now, but I would work with teams locally, and when I was new to it, I kind of just showed up and would just do whatever they want, right? I'm following everyone else's creative direction and whatever. It did a bunch of things for me, though. It got me fast, because everyone's staring at you, right? Like, we got the studio for 1 hour. What do you do? You're like, I don't know. I'm new. So it got me really fast, but it got me working with a team of creatives that maybe I didn't know, right? These weren't people I worked with in a salon. They were random strangers that I met on these like photography networking sites. So it was great experience and doing some, you never know what you're doing. It's like wild Mad Max smashing cars in a junk, it really weird, creative, you get those like weird moments. But that was my first taste of shooting. And that was when I started to develop my eye for composition and what things look like and how to set things up and how to work with these people, right? How to work with a photographer and a makeup artist. And I'm not running the show, right? So it was truly a team effort in that sense, because it was like, here's our concept. You do your job, you do your job, you do your job. And so that prepped me for NAHA. Now, Rodrick also made me enter NAHA. I was such a fan of NAHA. Like, I would wait for the finalists to come out and I would watch it because I was like, oh, everyone is so amazing. And Rodrick and I started dating, and he paid for my first NAHA shoot for my Christmas present. Like, we had only been dating 6 months. I'm like, this guy's crazy.
At least he went from creepy to crazy. So...
Right. I mean, it took a while for me to go, he's great, right? It was creepy, crazy, whatever. So he really believed in me. I didn't, I'm like, no, that NAHA's not for me. I just really appreciate watching the talent. I really appreciate watching everybody. And he's like, but you do this. And I'm like, no, I don't do that though. Like, I do other stuff with these other random people. And he's like, well, I have a photographer that lives here that I really like. Just come down. And we shot, and I got nominated that first time, that first shoot.
So I want to pause you there for a second, because I love where this is going. I want to know how you felt. What was the difference and the switch that happened to you when all of a sudden you were in the finals? What was that like? What was there anything that shifted in your brain?
Everything shifted in my brain. It was like one of those, like, oh, I didn't even know that could happen, right? Like, little old me. I'm not sponsored by anybody. Nobody paid for Rodrick paid for my stuff, but nobody's looking at him as money bags over there that they're going to give him a win. He's not a Veda or, anything like that, but he believed in me even when I, didn't. And then I took that so seriously. I was like, oh my God, he paid for this. Like, what if I can't do it? And it was like a nightmare of a day. Like, my girl showed up. I booked her, the blonde headed, for whatever look I was doing, showed up with dark brown hair.
Oh,
so I had to do a corrective color before I even started it was a nightmare. So when I got nominated, I don't know what to think, but from then on, every year that I competed, I was not competing against anyone but myself.
Yes.
Every year. The only thing I wanted was to walk away from these shoots feeling good about it, feeling like I did a good job, feeling like I did better than the year before. So for me, the nomination wasn't anything other than it's possible.
Yeah.
I just never looked at NAHA like it was for me. I'm like, no, that's for the other people. And Rodrick's like, you're insane. What do you mean? Like, you're doing this work. You're already doing it. You're just not submitting it. So I think for me, that nomination more than anything was that it's possible. Yeah. And that from then on, the only person I was worried about competing with is me.
Yeah. I think
which takes a lot of pressure off everything, right? Like, I'm not going to fight you. So if I'm competing with me, it's fine. It's all good. Yeah. But
I take my hat off to you on that one, because I think that's really what it's got to be about is where are you at? And here's one thing I've always said to people: do what you like, because if you don't like it when you're done, and other people don't like it and judge it poorly, then you've got nothing. But so that's when people say, well, what do the judges want? I think that's one of the worst questions ever to ask is, what do the judges want? Don't think about what the judges want. Think about what you want. What do you want to do? What expresses you? What at the end of the game, if you don't even get a mention in it, do you still like the work? Can you hang it on the wall? Is somebody going to publish
And
your
that's
work?
the thing. Yeah,
It's branding.
there's been years I haven't been nominated, and they've been some of my favorite collections to where you're like, how did this not get nominated?
Yeah.
But in those moments, I'm like, okay with it, because even seeing what got nominated over mine, I'm like, well, I still like mine better. But again, when you're competing with yourself, you're not mad about it. And it was funny, the first NAHA I won, we walked away from that shoot and I was hysterical. I was like, that was the worst shoot I've ever done in my entire life. And the photographer's like, what are you talking about? I don't think you understand. Like, once I put it in edit, I think you're really going to like it. I'm like, no. I mean, my model didn't show up. The photographer hated the location, and we ended up shooting in a parking structure for 13 hours. My kids were there. I mean, it was the most chaotic day. And I just, from an energy standpoint, felt really awful. And we won. Yeah. So like, the work was great though. Like when we got the finished work, I was like, oh, hell yeah, that's amazing. Okay. Yeah. I see what you did there. But it was the chaos, but I also live in chaos. So I don't know.
Well, and think about it this way. I always believe that the universe throws something at you, and if you can't solve it, you're going to get stuck there the rest of your life. But if they can throw all the crap at you and you can solve it and come away, then even if you said, look, by the end of it, and I didn't get the win and I didn't get a finalist, but I do love the shots, it's still a win. Now you can still keep moving forward. But if it's like, I'm going to take my football and I'm going to go home, then you get stuck there the rest of your life. So I just want to jump, because we have more in common than you think. Because when I looked at your work, and I don't remember the year, but you did that collection where you had knitted hair in it. Mm-hmm. And I want to know about where that came from. Anywhere. What's that?
That one never went anywhere. And it had like a crocheted piece of hair in the middle. And that is one of my favorite shots that I've ever done. And literally no one liked it. Like,
don't say no one. Don't say no one, because I loved it.
It never went anywhere. But that was one of those moments that I was like, but here's the thing. I learned how to crochet.
Yeah.
I really liked the outcome of the photo. I love that model that I worked with. She's an amazing human. Yeah. So like spending the day with her was great. And I didn't know how to crochet when I had that idea. So I had to first learn how to crochet. And then I had to learn how to do it with hair, which, I couldn't do it again. I don't think it would take me hours, but I was really proud of that, because I really had to push myself to learn all those new things and make it look good. So I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, I did. I love that. And I think we had a meeting of minds psychically on that one, because I went through a similar experience where I wanted to knit something and I didn't know how to knit. And I'm just going to say, so I had to learn how to do it. Like you, I went down, bought the stuff, and I said, I have no idea what to do. And they suggested what I do. And he said, well, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to make? And I said, well, I'm not going to use yarn. I'm going to knit hair. And here's the words that the people at the store gave me. Oh, that's creepy. So I wanted to go, I never did, but I wanted to take the collection back into them and show them, if you know how to crochet and knit, of what you can do with it. So, but, way I want to spin that to the people listening and watching right now is that never forget that a different medium of something, nobody ever thought that somebody would just, when everybody was doing roller sets, that somebody would say, hey, nobody's just cutting hair architecturally. Let's try that one out. And you're always going to meet, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, and I'm going to mess it up, but he said that mediocre people, great people are met with violent oppositions to mediocre minds. And I think that it's the people that have the ability to think differently and think, I hate the expression outside the box, but you have to think differently than what's being thought at the time. And you thought of that. And I just take your hat off to you, because now you see lots of people are doing it. So
I know it was funny because it didn't get nominated. And then the next year, like half the collections had crocheted hair. And I did the slow turn at Rodrick, like, what? I was already there and then nobody liked it. But I do think it's important to keep those creative juices flowing. And sometimes you do have to get a little weird with it. Like I told you, I, went through, I'm still, I think, going through my little dark period where I just am sort of losing myself in some of the administrative part of running this business. And I don't know how to get it back, right? Because you've got to find that spark, which you can't just make happen, or else I would have made it happen. So I signed up for a pottery class that starts in January. Good. And in working with texture, I've always compared it to sculpting because it's a three-dimensional thing that you're working in, and it lives in projection. So usually when I'm working with curls, I'm sculpting them and molding them and, creating looks. And so it's very similar to working with clay and how you mold it and tweak it and whatever. So I'm trying different things just to get those juices flowing and just to get that off the wall, out of the box thinking going. Like maybe I can come up with, what's next for me. Just trying different stuff on.
Yeah. And I think you have to have something that pulls you out of where you're at. I mean, because God bless you. I mean, where I so admire what you're doing is you're like there's abstract thinkers and linear thinkers, and I think that you're obviously an abstract thinker that had to learn to think linear, but I think that you got to watch, and I love the fact that you're going to take pottery simply because you've got to have an outlet for that abstract thinker to be creative. And I think that that's going to be a nice spark for you. And we share something there as well, because I've always said when I can't do, I have to have things that will make me my therapy. Sitting down and just braiding hair for hours on ends while I'm watching TV, that's therapy for me. It's better than.
Oh yeah, I did that.
Go ahead.
To learn braiding. Yeah. Because braids became popular and I didn't know how to do that. So I'd sit with the mannequin in my lap and I'd cornrow while I watched some TV.
So here's the. Have you? I want to find out where was some of the. If there was an educator that, like, where did the education spark? Because you've been out, you've done education, etc. What was the spark that I always want to find out that from making the decision to get into hair and then become very successful at hair, but then there's that tweak in there that says I want to give back, share. What was the in for you in that one? How did that happen?
For me, I was always kind of involved in like younger stylists in whatever shop I was working in, or when I had my salon with the partners, we all kind of took turns mentoring and coaching, and we would invite the local beauty school students to come down and hang out with us and shadow us and stuff like that. So I think that was always kind of just part of the way that I was trained in the industry. I think being at a team-based Aveda salon for my apprenticeship, working as a team and all helping each other out and helping each other learn, it wasn't even taught. It was expected. It was just, this is our culture and this is what we do. So you better help the person next to you. Right. So for me, that just was kind of innate in the way that I was like raised in the industry. Yeah. I never really thought about doing shows or anything like that. I mean, for no reason, just I had a lot going on and it just never crossed my mind. But when I started dating Rodrick, he was doing that for Andis, and we were dating long distance. So he was in South Carolina and I was in Michigan. And we quickly realized that this long distance relationship was going to get really expensive. And so I started teaching with him, and then it's like a write-off and you can travel with each other and it's a business expense instead of a personal one. And then we started, if I'm meeting there, I might as well be teaching at him, right? So we started just throwing my name in and I started getting booked classes. So it was slow in terms of getting me there, right? Like, it was just like a class here, a class there, but then it was like every major trade show and a bunch of salons and a bunch of schools, and so it's kind of like I dipped my toe in and then it worked out, and then I just kept going. I think with anything in life, if you do whatever is right in front of you, the best that you can, the next thing will be right behind it, right? And so I think whatever it is, it could be teaching, it could be building a clientele, it could be shooting, it could be whatever. But as long as you're giving it your all and having ethics behind it, right? That you walk into it ready to work on time, do what's expected. I think those opportunities are just going to start snowballing because everyone doesn't do that. Right. I'll just leave it at
that. Bingo. If you had, and this is one, I want to kind of, I always thought this, when you have, I don't know if every channel does it, but the morning show that I watch every morning, they always have these things on if you had to write a note to yourself. And I know this isn't fair because that person has like weeks or whatever to write this incredible note to yourself, that if you were talking to your adolescent self about what's going to happen to you and where you go and blah, blah, blah. And I realize it's not a fair question. But if you had to top line some things that you would talk to Lauren as your 16-year-old self, knowing where you are now and knowing what some of the pitfalls were and knowing how you got through them, what would you say to that 16-year-old Lauren?
So I know this might sound weird, but I don't regret ever. I'm a very forward-looking person, and so I generally never look back and regret because, like, all of those things kind of lead you to where you are and who you are. I think the biggest thing, my mom was never really big on me doing hair, and so it was a point of contention for quite some years. Until that first NAHA show that she went to and was like, oh, well, you're actually doing this. It was kind of a switch in opinion. My only advice to myself would be to not let that get to me as much as I did. It's hard to push through sometimes when you have somebody in your ear that's like not supportive. And I really noticed the difference when I started dating Rodrick and watching how quickly my career catapulted when I had somebody that believed in me. Mm-hmm. So not only did he have connections, we both had connections separately. And so bringing those together obviously helped, but I don't think that was it. I think it was that I had somebody that truly believed in not just me as a person, but me as a talent and as a business person and as a hairstylist and educator, all of these things that, so I guess the biggest thing is that in order to reach your full potential, you really truly need people that add to you and only that add to you, in your ear and in your life, because it is such a big difference when you are surrounded by people that are cheering you on and holding you up than people that are telling you that you're making mistakes, right? So I think my only advice to me would be to be careful of who I allow to get inside my head.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
So, I mean, I've done a lot of really dumb shit, though. So like, don't get it twisted. I just don't regret those things. I embrace those things.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm part of the Get a Lot of Dumb Shit Society. So, hi, Chris.
Yeah, right? Like, but how do you regret them? Because you think about those mistakes, and you're like, well, if I wouldn't have made that mistake, then I, wouldn't have gotten this whatever opportunity or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, let's face it, mistakes are made every day, and I think that if we didn't make mistakes, we wouldn't be who we are. So,
And you wouldn't learn. I mean, how many times has somebody told you something and you're like, yeah, versus you do it and you screw it up and then you really remember it then, right?
Yeah.
So I think those mistakes lead to like long-lasting intelligence. We'll say that.
And that's I could go on to a whole another hour on that one about how our society perceives mistakes when that's the only way we learn. But that'll be for another time, another conversation. I'm just going to jump in, and this is our rapid fire segment, and
Okay.
and again, I'm going to throw out. I got about a series of questions here, and I just want you to think about, where they are, just some stuff that comes right up on top of your head. Okay, so what turns you on?
I'm like, why are my hands? My hands are sweating.
Well, remember, they're just your answers, so they're always the right ones. So, what turns you on in the creative process?
Working with new techniques and new mediums. So every time I shoot, I try to learn something.
What stifles the creative process for you?
Being hot. Being sweaty.
A thing in your life, a thing in life in general that you dislike the most.
Liars.
Oof. And the things that you love in life the most.
My family.
Oh, love it. Most difficult time in your life.
Right now.
Things that you dislike most about our industry.
The excuses.
And what is it you like the most about our industry?
The power we have to change people's lives.
Proudest moment of your life?
Oh, I have so many. Probably winning the awards would probably be the proudest. Well, one of the proudest. There's too many.
And we're not taking anything away from any of those other ones. It's the one that come into your brain right now. Probably that one because we've been talking a lot about it. But a living person that you admire the most.
My husband.
Something that people don't know about you.
Can we come back to that one? That's hard. I feel like I'm like a wide open book. I got to think about that one for a second.
A person that you wish you could meet.
A person I wish I could meet.
Living or dead?
I really would love to meet Barack Obama.
Oh, nice. A month off, where would you go? What would you do?
I would go back to Japan and travel around that country. Visiting that country brings me so much peace. So
I agree. Your greatest fear?
Letting the people I love the most down.
Favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Favorite comfort food?
Cake.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
The pressure I put on myself to be perfect with all of my work.
Your most treasured personal possession?
My wedding ring.
If you could, is something in the industry that you haven't done, but you want to?
No, I've literally done everything in the industry I think that I currently want to, and that could change.
Okay, now I know that you said that you'd never do anything over again simply because that's who you are. However, if you could have one do-over in your life, what would it be?
my first marriage.
It's funny the number of times I get that.
Maybe not a do-over. I wouldn't want to do that over.
Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair or anything involved with hair. What would you do?
I'd probably become a therapist just because I feel like that just makes sense.
Okay. If you had one wish for industry, what would it be?
I wish that everybody going into it understood what their job is actually about.
Yeah.
And in terms of serving people and the power that we have.
Love it.
I think that's underrated and it's misunderstood.
Yeah. Lauren, if somebody, I mean, it'd be remiss if I didn't say, like, that when people are going, oh my God, this is an amazing woman, and they want to get a hold of you to book you, talk to you, find out where you're going, etc. How do people get a hold of you?
The easiest way would be our email, but I also can give you our social media.
Yeah. What is that?
So the email is hairlabdetroit@gmail. Super simple. And then my Instagram is Lauren, Lauren, M Moser. So 2 M's, Moser. And then my Facebook is actually Lauren Samuels, just because I like to keep everyone confused.
Well, Lauren, you didn't confuse me at all. I think you inspired me and many other people that are out there. But Lauren, I just want to say thank you. It was a pleasure having on you. It's we haven't had a chance to talk, meet, carry on a conversation, and find out about each other until now. Even I've always known about you. I've always known who you were, but I just feel blessed that I've had this time to meet you and take you on as a new acquaintance and friend. So I just want to say thank you for being on Headcases.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and we can always do this again. I had fun, so.
Love it. Okay. So again, I know you gave up your time and your energy, especially with everything you're doing. So I just want to say thank you. It was a pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you.